So you'll see that the title is Shameless Clickbait, and I'll explain why shortly. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the Great Resignation 2, which is how to retain your teams when the market inevitably improves. So I'm Richard Fisher. My business is called Skillsearch. We are a recruitment company that specializes in the video game space. I've got 30 years worth of experience, of which 12 of those have been in the video game arena. So I'll be talking about the Great Resignation. I'll be giving you lots of data, but before I do, I'll be telling you where the data's from. I'll be explaining the hidden risks if you're an employer, if you hire staff. I'll be talking about the hidden risks that you face now that you have no idea about. I'll be talking about what happens if you do nothing and the implications of not being aware, and talking a few ideas about what you can do to mitigate, leading on to any questions at the end. So what is the Great Resignation? It wasn't a term we were so familiar with in the games industry because the Great Resignation was a term that came on the end of COVID. And what it meant was, after 2 years of people working at home, not moving jobs, when restrictions lifted, lots of people moved jobs. And it was called the Great Resignation because the press love a hook. The market in games has been struggling recently, and it's been struggling for near on 2 years now. The one thing that will happen, and okay, I say the Great Resignation is clickbait because I don't think the return to where the market is going to be, is going to be the same as the return after COVID. It's not going to be as dramatic, but it will improve. And when it improves, invariably, people will move jobs. It's statistically a given, as I'll go to show. So it potentially has a massive impact on anyone running teams. So where's the data from? So as a recruitment business, we run a survey every year. We've been running it for a decade. We call it the Salary and Satisfaction Survey, but it's a hell of a lot more than talking about salary or people's personal satisfaction. There's many, many data points. So I've pulled out some data here that we haven't published in our survey to date because it's relevant. So the headline piece of data for you. We surveyed 2,408 people from the games and interactive industry, of which that included artists, programmers, designers, every aspect of people running a game, of which 958 of those were across Europe. So to give you an idea, it's a decent-sized data set for a survey of its type. Okay, so what's the hidden risk? The reality is that unless your business is super small, less than 10, you probably have no idea what's going on inside people's minds. You may think you do, but you probably don't. So from our survey, 74% of respondents across Eastern and Western Europe said that since we ran the survey earlier this year, they'd be actively or passively job hunting. So just so you understand what the difference in those terms is, active is pretty obvious. It means that someone has gone, I'm looking for a new job. I'm going to put my CV in the market, or I'm going to respond to LinkedIn job adverts. The passive job market basically means it's someone who's sat there at home who's saying, listen, I'm not looking for a new job, but if a talent acquisition person phone me up or message me talking about a great job in a great location with a better project for more money, then I'm going to be interested. So based on our survey, 74% of respondents across Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, have basically said, I'm open to talk to you about a new opportunity. What that looks like across the whole global respondents, there's 1,686 people. So just to give you an idea of a solid number. So how that breaks down, and the question we asked was pretty simple. Will you be actively job hunting in 2024? You can see how that breaks down in between passive and active. In the UK, it's a smaller passive market than Eastern Europe, which had some pretty interesting stats, and I'll draw some more out later, where 46% of people in Eastern Europe would be actively job hunting, 35% passive. And that splits down globally, almost, I mean, it's not, right? It's just over a third, but almost a third. So to give you some context, anything between kind of 75 and 66, depending on which region you're in, are going to be potentially looking for work. And bearing in mind, this is in the context of optimism for 2024, and we know what 2024 has been like in reality. And we start running our survey, our new survey. We start gathering the data pretty soon. And when we do, my expectation is, guess what? People are going to be really optimistic that the market's going to change in 2025. So I expect these figures to mirror fairly accurately when we publish the results of our next survey that we'd love you all to contribute in the first few months of 2025. So that's the total numbers, but if you want to get an idea about what roles are at risk, I mean, I think it's probably fairly obvious, but here it is in, data form that the more senior you are, if you're a lead, if you're management, you're less likely to move than someone junior. And if you've got people of your business that have been there less than or around 1 to 4 years in their career, they're the ones that are particularly at risk. But anyone mid, I mean, no one's completely free of risk, but it reduces based on seniority. So, also an interesting stat that 22% of respondents, and this is based on 2023's data, but 22% of respondents turned down a job offer in 2023 to stay at their current company. So if you think about the way you works with your team, you normally only know, well, okay, some people you might know there's an issue, they might tell you, but 90% of the time, you'll only know there's an issue when somebody goes, hey, can I have a word? Look, I'm leaving. 22% of your staff, if you have a team, 22% of your staff on average did get offered a job somewhere else, but they decided to stay. And you'll never know about it. So when I'm talking about the hidden risk, this is a great example. And the reason they may want to stay is they actually, they looked at the market, they got offered something, but it wasn't as good. The current project was better. Maybe the cash wasn't enough to lure them out of the opportunity. The job itself wasn't as it was sold. The new job, that is. They got multiple job offers, which they still turned down. Or they just realized they were content where they are. So awesome if someone did stay, so your company came off more favorably than the competition, but still this is risk that you're not aware of. So not only could 75% of your staff be available or interested in looking for a job, but 22% of them were actually out in the market, got offered a job that they turned down. And just this slide, because this slide kind of blew me away when I first saw it. So this is specifically around Eastern Europe, where 27% of respondents in Eastern Europe accepted a new job, and 23 respondents in Eastern Europe turned down a job to stay at the current company. So 50% of the people that we surveyed in Eastern Europe got offered a job, of which many took, many stayed. So, what happens if you do nothing? If you cross your fingers and hope it's all going to be fine? And as I said, this is really gearing towards the market will shift. The market will shift at some stage. People will start looking for jobs again. So what happens if you do nothing? The first is you might have to end up counter-offering your existing staff to stay. So someone comes to you, you realize they're an absolute key employee to the business, and it's going to cost you more money to induce them to stay. And then, there's mixed statistics on people that accept a counter offer to stay where they are, but there's still a strong chance they'll end up leaving anyway within 12 months. There's the cost of a new hire, not just hiring somebody to replace. They probably will cost more. Okay, maybe not in current market conditions, but in a normal world, they cost more. And of course, there's the cost of hire. You may have to use someone like me to find this person for you. And sadly for everyone here, I don't do it for free. It costs money. There's the time to hire involved. Statistically, from when we take on a vacancy to when somebody starts in a job, there's a lag of around 50 days. So you need to be aware there's probably a 50-day gap from someone leaving or at least handing in their notice before you've replaced them. And that can have massive issues in terms of project deadlines being missed. So statistically, there's a big risk. The implications of those people leaving can be quite profound. So what can you do? Well, the best thing you can do is understand what your teams actually want. And it's not simple, but I'm going to give you some of the data that we pulled together now. So this is just a benefit dump, right? This is based on our survey globally. This is what people listed as benefits. And we all know that, or kind of conventional wisdom in business says that, but benefits aren't going to induce people to join your company. Who cares if you have a fruit bowl or a pool table or this type of thing? But it can have a negative effect on someone's engagement with the business. I'm not going to go through these all one by one, but I just wanted to give you a feel for the type of things that people are talking about, and then I'll pull out some of the most important elements. Okay, so the most important aspects of work. So it's different to benefits. What are the most important things when we've surveyed people on why they do what they do? So the number one thing, unsurprisingly, I guess, is salary. So people do it for the money. Let's not be embarrassed about it. We work because we want the cash. But fairly high up, and we kind of just differentiate again globally in Eastern Europe, just because global was almost pretty much aligned on the left. Eastern Europe had it in slightly different order. But salary, work-life balance, have you got it right? Do you understand what work-life balance looks like for your staff? Most of us as employers have a clear idea about what it looks like to us, but is that aligned with our staff? Are you running challenging, exciting projects? I appreciate that's not always possible, but it is a draw for people in terms of what exciting or what good work looks like for them. Personal development and progression. This one features strongly when we're talking to people about why you're looking to leave where you are now. And the thing that we hear time and time again is there's no progression. What do you need? You need someone to drop dead in front of me for me to take the next step. And, that's not a reasonable way to run your career. And another key thing is the company culture, which is always interesting, right? Because I've met studios all around the world, and many of them are really proud of their culture, but it's actually a hard thing to define what your culture is. And as I go through later, I'll introduce you to at least one tool. There are many out there, but there are tools out there that you can assess your culture based on asking your staff what culture means to them. But culture's it's a nebulous thing, right? It's really important, but what the hell does it actually mean? And it ties in with the atmosphere of the business. You want to love people coming to work, right? You want people to love to come to work. More than the pay, you want them to get up in the morning because they're highly motivated. So, what was ranked as the number one most wanted benefit across Europe? And that is Okay. It comes with a warning. Sorry, the slides have got mixed somewhere around on the mix, but it's going to come with a warning. So I'm going to caveat why this number one benefit is also potentially a number one problem for the industry. And it's remote work. Okay? So remote work featured fairly heavily. Globally, 65% of people ranked remote work as either the most essential aspect of what they engages them with a job, or it's right up there in importance. And when it comes to Eastern Europe, that's 75%. Remote working is either essential or very important. And I'm going to explain why it's good or bad, depending on your perspective. Now, I've put another company name up there because we've asked them, this organization, My People, to help with the data here. So it's not my data. It's not from our survey. My People are a technology company that have come from the world of sport. I said I'd name check them, by the way, for using the data for free. So they come from the world of sport, and they use raw data to improve teams' performance. And a lot of it is around cultural assessment. So they've got incredible data from a myriad of different industries, mainly technology. So where I'm talking about a data set that I've pulled for 2,500 people, theirs is set around a data size of 50,000 employees assessed over a 3-year period. And this is what their data strongly says. Firstly, on average, there's a 32% task improvement for someone working from home or remotely versus someone in the office. So if you're in a role where output is the most important thing, so maybe a developer or an engineer, you will be performing tasks incredibly efficiently compared to performing those tasks in the office. However, if you run teams, if you manage a business, there's a 20 to 30% drop in team cohesion. So it drives job boredom, it offers a high rise in terms of job burnout, which results in poor communication, higher rate of mistakes, people just solo operating. You just can't get them fully engaged, and a much higher degree of stress. And you've got to think at, what all those water cooler chats that you don't have will, the impact that'll have on the business. So if you're working in the office, you have greater team cohesion. I work in a sales team, right? And there's business development people here. Salespeople tend to thrive around being around each other. I know from talking to people about the data that, anyone who's involved in production or design feels quite strongly about being able to engage with their colleagues, probably more so than a developer. But think of it this way, or the way that I think of it is this way. If someone is at home doing a task-based role, and someone steps in and says, hey, you're working from home, doing a task-based role, you're not engaged with your employer, why don't you do the same thing for me in the same location, same task, but I'll pay you 5,000 euros more. It puts your people at risk. So it's really trying to understand either what impact work from home has versus the risk of bringing people into the office. Because there is that, we know statistically, there is that lovely improvement in terms of task-based efficiency. So it's a balancing act. And I don't have a solution for this, by the way. This is really just making everybody aware that working from home can be, or working remotely can be absolutely brilliant for your staff, but it ain't great for businesses. And I think this is reflected in the fact that we've seen a trend. 2 years ago, about 50% of our vacancies were full remote. Now it's about 20%. And we've seen more and more industry-wide announcements of people being frustrated because they're being asked to come into the office on a hybrid basis, but primarily in office. But this is the kind of data that tells you why companies are looking at this, because we know statistically working from home ain't great. It's great for you individuals, ain't great for the team. How do you balance that? So, what could you do? And what you can do is quite a complex area, so I haven't got all the answers for you here. So I'm just going to throw through, and also time-wise, I'm just going to run through a few of the things that you might want to consider. The first is be pragmatic and build staff loss into your recruitment plans. So if you're looking to grow by 10 people next year, you probably need to factor in hiring 14 to 15 people, depending on how quickly the market moves. Make sure, if nothing else, that you're benchmarking salaries on a regular basis. And the results of our survey give details on those kind of benchmark salaries in detail. And if the data you want isn't there and you want it more granular, then reach out to me. I can give that to you. But make sure that you're not underpaying your staff and making it easier for them to be poached, because the cost of replacement might be a hell of a lot more than paying that person the extra few €1,000s in the first place. Do you ever check in with your people to see if they're happy? If so, great. If not, you might want to consider it. We do it in our business. It's incredible how open people are. If you obviously make it anonymous, people tend to be super open. Sometimes there's some painful things that I have to swallow that we've got wrong, but it also allows me to address any reasonable gripes that people may have early on. And because the way we do it is we engage with the team and say what changes we've made, it makes people feel that they've got some say and control over kind of, at least not the commercial direction of the business, the cultural direction of the business. There are cultural assessment tools out there, such as My People, and some of them work brilliantly. You can get as granular as working out whether this person's team is actually aligned with them and the way they run their team. Or you can look at cultural engagement across the whole business and see how well you're aligned. So there are tools out there that can help you do that. Quite hard to do yourself. When people leave, make sure you conduct exit interviews. Make sure it's robust. You know, often people will vent because they're leaving for a reason. Sometimes people kind of lay it on quite strong. So again, you need kind of broad shoulders to be able to take the feedback, but don't avoid it. And then make sure you just understand what's going on with your competitors. If anyone really wants to get under the hood of their competitors, then come find me. I'm going to be sat at the Careers Hub tomorrow. Thankfully, we're moving the Careers Hub down into the kind of the main hall. But I can show you a tool that I have on LinkedIn called Talent Insights, which my guess is nobody else has because it costs lots and lots of money, but they've thrown it in terms of their package of recruitment tools. LinkedIn charge recruiters lots and lots of money every year, right? So, but it allows you to understand what you're doing, where you're losing staff to, where you're gaining staff from, but also gives you some insight comparatively to your competitors. But failing looking at Talent Insights is always useful to keep an eye on your competitors. And that may be just people working in the same part of the games ecosystem as you, or it could be working, comparing against people that are just geographically near you. So, not everything, but just some ideas. And the one, I guess the big takeaway that I want everybody to take from this is you just need to be aware that if you don't look under the hood, often you never know what's going on, you know, which is all right if you're like me driving a car to not look under the hood because I don't care what's going on. But when it's your business, you need to know. in much more detail and try and anticipate the problems you might have. So, kind of the 5 things for me is you only see what's happening on the surface. When someone leaves, it's, sometimes it's an absolute drama. It's a disaster when somebody leaves. But you've got to remember, for them, that's the end of a process. For you, it's the beginning. But for them, it's the end of a process. If you can understand what's happening at earlier stages, you're more likely to retain staff. You need to understand what's happening competitively in the market to ensure that you're competitive. You need to keep a dialogue with your staff, engage them, try and understand what's missing. Give them some wins. If you haven't got a staff forum, if you haven't surveyed, if you haven't got a staff forum, then maybe offer that opportunity. And it doesn't have to be negative, It's what can make the business better? Who wouldn't want to make the business better? And if you're asking your staff, come on, we really want to make this the best studio there is available out there. What input can you give us? Then they're going to feel engaged. Mitigate against the worst case, as I said. People are going to leave your business. No matter how hard you work to retain people, the market is going to improve. People are going to leave. Mitigate against it. Be one step ahead. So that kind of plan B is ready to jump into action. And then finally, just keep doing it on a regular basis. It's not a one-off hit. Asking for engagement from your team isn't a one-off hit. You need to be reviewing it on an ongoing basis. My suggestion would be, as a minimum, every 6 months that you're out there engaging with your staff. Of course, there's going to be kind of micro engagements that you do all the time. But in terms of going through a kind of formal process, whether it's a happiness survey or just your own internal survey on how satisfied people are, then make sure that happens on a regular basis. And that should be it from me. I have one page that's... Yeah, there we go. If you can just jump on the next page for me, I'd appreciate it. Okay, it's disappeared again, but there's a page with a couple of QR codes on there because there's 2 QR codes. The first is we would love you to contribute towards next year's survey because, I love talking about this stuff. I'd love to be talking about it every year, but next year, if I talk about it, I'd love to be talking about 5,000 data points, not 2,500 data points. So there's the opportunity to sign up and to do the survey, but there's also an opportunity to sign up, there we go, to receive the survey when it's complete. So we normally survey everybody and pull the data together by the end of the financial year with a view of publishing this survey at some stage in February. And as I said, the survey, if you're running a business or just interested in what's happening in the market, even if you're looking for a job, right? It's not just for employers, it's for those trying to work out whether they're paid a fair amount. That data's all in there, but the data is super granular and we don't put it all when we publish it, otherwise there'll be just too much. So if there's something missing from the survey when you receive it that you'd be interested in, then please come to me and ask me if that data is available. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.